All right. Well, we got 2 games in the NBA playoffs here tonight to break down with you. Hopefully, we'll be able to find a couple of angles that we can approach these 2 games, cash a few tickets. We'll talk some props. We'll talk a couple of totals. You guys knew the routine. We'll also go ahead and maybe, just maybe, finally stick a fork in the Miami Heat here tonight. But I don't know. We're going to have to ask Rob Veno joining us here today in the NBA Tip-Off Show. Veno in the house here. A lot to dissect over the last couple of days here on what we've witnessed. But we do have a couple of all-important, game 5s here. Early one will be the Miami Heat taking on those Boston Celtics. No Jaime Jaquez. Damn, I don't know if there's anybody left. They're pulling off, Patty Mills off the scrap heap. I think he was working at Foot Locker a week ago, and now all of a sudden he's running point for the Miami Heat. So things have gone from bad to worse in that one. Veno, let's start with this. I don't know how anybody in their right mind can trust the Celtics to lay this number. I think the Celtics win, Veno, but the question is by how much? And a lot of people very upset last time these two played because not only did they not hit their team total, the Celtics, the game went under. All sorts of bad things happen simply because that's what you get in blowouts. You get uncertainty. Is this a blowout here tonight?
Well, I mean, if we just go by what's on paper, I guess it is, right? I mean, for Miami, I don't think the Heat would have it any other way than to be severely shorthanded and be the 14-point underdog. Walk into Boston. I mean, we kind of saw this script in game 2 when Miami knocked down 23 threes and scored 111 points and beat Boston outright as a 14-point dog. So you never know what you're going to get production-wise from Miami, but you certainly know what you're going to get effort-wise, and you certainly know what you're going to get game plan-wise. Mm-hmm. Last game, Joe, it was interesting to me. I think we might have done this game, but Tyler Hero, Caleb Martin, Eric Spoelstra, they all felt heading into game 4 after what they saw in their first home game in game 3, like all of their opportunities were open for them. Even though they lost game 3, Martin and Hero especially, they were like, man, these threes, they were still wide open. They're still there for us. They blamed it on being a little tentative, a little passive, and they were going to be more aggressive. But they came out in game 4. The shots were there. They were right about that. They just didn't make them. And so Boston wins a low-scoring game. I think I had Miami over 96.5 team total in that game. It did not get there. They wound up getting somewhere in the high 80s. Now you go back to Boston. You're supposed to get smashed here by the Celtics. And to your point about can you trust Boston to cover 14, good point brought up when I was on with Ski today. He said if Boston, now that Kristaps Porzingis is hurt, if in the fourth quarter Boston's up by margin, he wouldn't be surprised if Joe Mazzulla started pulling people at that point so they don't get anybody else hurt. But it's still Joe Mazzulla. So do we know that he'll do the right thing? I'm not so sure. I think there's a couple of things here that I looked at, Joe, and they both come from a Boston team total perspective. They played 25 times this year, 25 times without Kristaps Porzingis. 23 of the 25, they scored over 107, which is their number tonight. But forget about 107. All 23 times out of 25, that's 92%, by the way. Merrill's not here, but I'll do the math for myself. 92% of the time without Porzingis this year, they scored 112 or more. So I don't know that Kristaps Porzingis limits them offensively, point scoring wise. We've certainly seen Boston's bench do more than enough to cover when they have had top tier personnel out of the game. And then if you're looking at Boston from a first half perspective, because let's just note this. Their fourth quarters have been a disaster. Boston fourth quarters have been as weak can be. It's cost them their team total, I think, at least twice. Not really. Yeah, probably the third time, too, the game they lost straight up. And they barely scraped by in game 1. But they haven't scored more than 23 in a fourth quarter yet. And they've scored as low as 17. So where they made all their hay is in the first half. 3 first halves out of 4 games, they've scored over 60. Tonight's team total is 55 first half. I think if you look at it from one of those two directions, Boston first half, point total over 55. Boston full game team total over 107, which is now, by the way, dropped from 112 where it started in game one. I think you can't go wrong with either of those. And as for the side, I'd be very hesitant to lay it with Boston, but I'm just not sure I want to take it with Miami in their current shape either.
So it's forget about Miami pulling it out their ass. It ain't going to happen. Shout out to Money, by the way, in the chat, as well as Eric Habe, Seth in the house and company here. Already seeing FNS in the chat room also yelling Celtics, and I got you on that. Listen, the thing that intrigues me the most about this game, Vino, and I think you're spot on, is the total. Last night, I noticed that in a couple of spots, 199.5. And I've been asking, when are we going to start getting in these playoffs totals under 200? When are we going to see it? And the answer is we saw it last night. Now, it did get pushed up to 200, 200.5, somewhere in that point. But I don't know what the market has been doing with this game, with this series. We're talking about every game, or at least 3 out of the last 4 games. The market has pushed this number up before tip-off. We're seeing over money the last 3 games coming in here. The under is 3-1 in the series. And not only have they gone under, it ain't even close to being anywhere even near the number that it gets bet to. I don't know what the market, the only game that went over, Miami had to shoot 60% from 3. So I don't know what the fascination with the market pushing this total up, and up over the last 3 games. They keep waiting for what? I don't know what are we going to expect here tonight? I don't think you can sniff 200 in this game.
Yeah, and I think, 3 of the 4 games is attributed to Miami's low scoring, right? And the other one, Boston only scored 101. So you have to have 2 to participate unless you're going to get 125 out of Boston. And in that case, a 125 to 80 game. It's a complete rout. Boston hasn't really hit offensive stride in this series yet, Joe. I use these numbers that I keep for myself because I play a lot of totals, and I just categorize it as potential points. If the ball goes through the hoop every single time you put it up, what would you score? Boston, through 4 games, their average potential points per game is 300.4. They've only averaged scoring 35% of those points. Their team average is 105.3 for the series. They haven't really hit stride offensively. And without Jaquez Jr. tonight, I get it that it's just more points that Miami probably doesn't have in their rotation. But he's also a pretty scrappy defender, too. And you start looking at the defenders that they've lost to injury here, and it's going to affect them on both ends. So question A, if Boston does, at home, they were the second highest scoring team in the league, right? They averaged like 122 at home. If they do that, what they've done all year tonight, then maybe you get over this 200. You probably do. But if they, mosey on along and only play one half and give you garbage in the fourth quarter like they've been giving you, then you might have trouble getting over again.
The Celtics did play with just a little bit more pace at home than they did in Miami. I guess we should have expected that. But here's the other problem, right? Boston's also shown us that if this is a 20-point lead at the break, this game is grinding to a halt in the second half. And then we got to hope that Miami is, I mean, there was one point with 3 or 4 minutes left in the last game, Miami, that the 20-some-odd point lead got within almost 9 points, I think, because Boston slowed it down, didn't make any buckets. The team totaled 92.5, I'm seeing, for Miami here. It feels like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, what is going to change? Although no Porzingis here, you're not worried about the total maybe being a little bit lower for Boston as well?
Well, I don't, just because when I looked up the 25 games that they played without them, 23 times they scored over 112. So it's not like they miss him when he's not there for whatever reason. Boston just has those guys off the bench, Hauser, Pritchard. They come in and start lighting up threes. But to your point, it almost seems like Boston builds this lead and then just says, okay, this one's in the bag. Now, it bit them in the ass in game 2 because they had that halftime lead and Miami kept making shots. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, no. So we'll see. But they really haven't played a complete 48 minutes yet for sure.
No, they have not. And as we take a look here at some of the looks here, even in the first half, Vino, as we look into this, I'm thinking first half is 8.5. I know there's a lot of people that are thinking Celtics early. They'll have that double-digit lead again, and that'll be the end of it. I certainly think in the first half you're going to have a really good idea as far as what this game is going to be. So it's probably not a bad live betting spot here either. But the chances of Boston at home having a double-digit lead as they head into the break, probably not a bad situation, although you're paying a premium for it. But there's good chance they're going to be up by double digits, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, this series has almost drawn the same line in the sand that the Denver Lakers one did, right? You could play Lakers first half, go to bed, cash your ticket, Denver come back second half, you win that too. And here you could probably do the same thing because Miami's won every fourth quarter, Boston's won every first half. So if you wanted to play, how could you argue somebody who wanted to play it that way? That's the way the series has shown you it's going to go. And unless Boston has the offensive outburst that we know them to be capable of, then it probably just repeats what it's been doing for the first four games.
Bam Adebayo, I know I saw Tyler in the chat room talking about Bam's points and rebounds. Well, I'll tell you, his PRA, 37.5 points, assists, and rebounds. And I don't think he's hit that but once in this game. I mean, he's playing, 40 minutes a game here, Vino, good old Bam here, but they're just overmatched, Miami. And then they got to rely on shooting threes to stay in the game. And that kind of takes what Bam does out of the picture here. So kind of hard to go with a PRA for a guy in which Miami can't get to 90 points. And where's he getting the bulk of this from? Rebounds? It ain't going to be from assists and points. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't exceed that number, Joe, they might not get to 78 because, I mean, Tyler Hero's been a 3-point bust the last two games. Tyler Hero has had open shots. He's 5 of 15 from three. Caleb Martin did make a few last game. Duncan Robinson hardly even shot last game. Maybe he took one shot. So
correct.
And you're right. You start looking around and you're thinking to yourself, who's going to score here? Haywood Highsmith? I don't know. So Bam has to have a big game, but he hasn't shown us that he's going to, right? So it's hard to bet it when you haven't seen it.
I'll also say this, guys. First quarter for Boston, Vino, this is how hard we got to dive into this game here because we keep thinking something else is going to happen. And yet, if we just would have stayed steady from game one through this game, we'd be retiring right now. You've got the Celtics first quarter -1.5, maybe -2. They've won the first quarter by 10, by 9, and by 5 points. And the only exception is that game two in which they took their foot off the gas and they got caught. But, I mean, my goodness, if it ain't broke, Vino, I'm not fixing the first quarter either. I've seen enough early on to know probably going to be Boston putting the nail in the coffin here and doing it early.
Yeah, the way Jason Tatum has talked to us all season long after playing lousy at home last year, I think they had like a 500 record at home. And from the get-go this season, he told us that the home floor was going to be very, very important to this team. So to close it out, to have the opportunity to close it out at home at TD Garden, you would expect them to come out of the tunnel ready. They just... Like I say, they seem to be ready early every game. There's certainly the results prove it, but it's that second half where they just, I don't know if they just put it on cruise control or they just don't think Miami can get them. But you're always afraid that an Eric Spoelstra team will do what they did in game two and surprise the world.
Vino, it's so true. But yet I've cost myself a ton of money in this series expecting, heat culture. The problem is Spoelstra ain't playing. And when you got Patty Mills out on the court, guys, it's over. Like, stop. Like, don't waste any more money. Just play what we know to be true. And the Celtics are going to put them away early and often. So first quarter, first half for me. And if it ain't, I'm not going to go with a Boston team total over simply because we just watched what happened where they're up by 20 at the break and foot comes off the gas and the game comes to a crawl. And it's like, Give me the first half and first quarter. I think we're good to go in that one there. Shout out, by the way, Have. Catch you slipping trying to convince me he believes in the culture. I believe in the culture too, but not in this game. Hell no. The culture ain't going to get me an extra 25 points. You got to be kidding me. Absolutely not. Catch you slipping also, though, to be fair, believed in Laker greatness, and that didn't work out all that well either. Just saying there. But we do have a game out west, thank goodness, that has been, to me, Veno, this was the biggest zigzag series of them all. I thought this would be a really good spot to, with these two teams, to go back and forth. Kawhi out, we know that, but you and I, and we've talked about it all week, against Dallas, no Kawhi Leonard, this is a different team. Crazy enough, right? I don't know long-term they can win without him, but do they have enough at home to be able to handle Dallas for a second game in a row?
Well, they almost blew a 31-point lead.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And, it's interesting, Joe. Jason Kidd came under a lot of fire, maybe rightfully so, maybe not rightfully so. I'm not sure. But I know that if I can sit home in front of my television and see it, that the head coach should see it. Dallas ties this game with 4 minutes left the other day, 95-95. And in it for the Clippers, it becomes the James Harden show. And on the other side, it really became the Kyrie Irving show. Both guys were going crazy. Paul George was playing well too. But to my point here, Harden started taking the ball one-on-one, isolation ball. He would beat the first guy right to the paint. And then you would watch Maxi Kleber under the basket, somewhat in a backpedal, like running away from Harden as if he's going to defend the lob. And it happens once, Harden makes a layup. And it happens twice, Harden makes another layup. And it happens, and I'm like, after 3 times, you guys are going to lose the game because they're doing the same thing for the last 4 minutes. Finally, Dallas missed a couple of shots, and sure enough, Paul George hit a wild 3 from the baseline, I think, and that won the game. It took all of that, a little Dallas defensive stupidity. And to top that point off here, Joe, we talked an awful lot the last 2 months or so about Dallas's defensive rating, about Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively Jr. Now the Mavs protect the rim. And what happens when they have a chance to win? They don't protect the rim. I don't know where the coach was on this, but he wasn't there. Luka's hurt. He's had 2 days because of scheduling. It gave them almost 3 full days to get ready for this. But before I go getting crazy about Luka being hurt, I think we saw last game that they can easily turn the ball over to Kyrie, and he can do what Luka does. And Kyrie put on a performance the other night. He couldn't be stopped. And to me, that offense is a lot quicker and a lot less stagnant when Luka isn't pounding the ball into the hardwood until the 8-second mark. So I think that Dallas, they came in here game 2 with a purpose, and they won straight up. They actually got, I think it was Zubats out of the game within the first 4 minutes because of foul trouble. If they come with that aggression, and Jason Kidd hinted to it in a quote that they need to be better from the outset, which they weren't the other day. These series, like you say, when you use zigzag, they are even in the approach right off the first jump ball. It seems to zigzag. One game you're not there, you're not focused. The next game you're fully focused. It's really crazy how that works. But I would think, I kind of agree with you that I don't know what LA did the other day is sustainable without Kawhi. Yes, they're 2-0 without him, 0-2 with him. But I just don't know that that's sustainable because, you know what? They almost, like I said, they almost gave up a 31-point lead. Kind of shows me Dallas is the better team. And if Dallas comes to play from the first minute like they did in game 2, I think they're the better team here. But the line's going up, which doesn't thrill me. From 1.5 to 3, maybe you're better off playing money line now. I'm not sure.
So here's the thing, and I think it is, because here's my problem with this scenario, is that we learned this morning Kawhi was out, and the market shot this thing up to 3, right? Why? Was that news that Kawhi wasn't playing? Like that Kawhi is currently shaped means nothing to a line spread, guys. He's 60%. Every time he was on the court, He was a hindrance to everybody else, everything else the Mavericks were trying to do. Why in the hell would this line shoot up because he's not playing? That's the only thing that worries me, because you and I all season long, we preached it. Man, the overreaction to the ambulance chasers is crazy. And no more crazy than this. This feels like a who has the ball last kind of game. Moving it almost to 3.5 points because Kawhi's not playing is ludicrous to me.
I agree. And you said it best. It seems like we've been doing this NBA tip-off show for 3-4 years now.
Yep.
And I'd love to meet and shake hands with these people who see an injury and immediately run to the window because they're plentiful. And I don't know that they're Joe Public either because these things happen well before the tip-off ever happens. And generally the $50 bettor's not coming until an hour before game time. So you wonder why they react in such a way when there's no real proof, like you're saying, to go ahead and bet Dallas, at least on paper, because LA's 2-0 in this series without Kawhi. But they do. Yep. And for somebody like me who likes Dallas, it forces the price up and makes me think a little bit more. Do I really want to lay 3? You had mentioned you think it might be a last possession game. If it is, you don't want to be laying 3. So maybe money line is the right way. In my estimation, Dallas is the right side. I think that Luka, even if he's on the floor hurt, can be used as a decoy. Clippers still have to respect him for 3-point shooting or whatever. And Kyrie can take over. And I have to believe in these playoff series, which are won and lost on adjustments, that Jason Kidd will do the right thing here this time. I think, again, it's like I stayed in that Holiday Inn, right? Because I'm not an NBA coach, but I like to play one on this show. And if I was Dallas, they're so much faster than the other side. I don't know why they don't run more. And again, I would have those 2 rim protectors who also run the floor so well. I don't know how many alley-oop dunks we've seen out of Derek Lively in this particular series, but it's been a bunch.
Correct.
And Daniel Gafford as well. And Zubats is clumsy getting up and down the floor. So again, coaching adjustments that can be made. We'll see if Jason Kidd makes them here.
Listen, I thought, and I had said it before the last game, I thought that the Clippers were a much better team without a 60% Kawhi Leonard. I think they showed that quickly in that first game. Dallas, we have seen them sometimes has a problem of burying themselves early and then having to come from behind, right, Rob? With Doncic, and they almost pulled it off to their credit. Paul George had 26 points in the first half. If it was until the final 2 minutes, nobody even heard or knew if he was still playing. It really became Harden versus Kyrie. That's kind of what's going on. But is it me or is Kyrie the most non-talked about superstar that could literally carry this franchise, even if Doncic isn't 100% and nobody's mentioning him? Doncic gets all the headlines, which is fine. But Kyrie is an absolute monster this series. And he has been now, ever since the All-Star break? He's been absolutely ridiculous, and nobody gives him any credit.
Yeah, I agree. And I do feel like Kyrie could carry this team to victories, no problem. He shows you again last game that put the ball in my hands when I get it going. Nobody really can stop me. And he was doing it from everywhere. I mean, the 3-point shots were all net, and he makes the most difficult shots at the rim of any point guard. I mean, I was talking with my son, who's a Mavericks fan. He was down for the weekend, and he said, have you ever seen anybody finish at the rim the way Kyrie does? And it's hard to think. Michael Jordan obviously finished 2 hands under the rim, whatever. But Kyrie, how he makes some of these shots is amazing. So Dallas has the weaponry. That's for sure. They got to have the mindset, and the coach has to, I don't want to blame it all on the coach because maybe Kleba was just, down there dumb. But they have to be a little bit smarter, and they got to play. You don't want to play LA in a half-court game, right, Joe? If you walk up and play their game, they probably beat you. But if it takes 23 threes to beat Dallas in a game that close the other day, I don't think 23 threes are coming here tonight from the Clippers.
No, I am with you. And I know I see it in the chat room, and shout out to the boys there, Big Daddy in the house here. Catch you slip. S. Warrior is now wearing a Celtics uniform. What is going on with that, S. Warrior? We're going to have to dive into that. But It's almost as if, and I know Money and Derry, by the way, Derry's all for Team Stripper tonight. Not sure what that means, but I think it's a Harden reference, and I think that's where he's going here. But I will say, it almost feels like they are begging you to take Dallas, right? As if it's forget it. This Clippers team is done. We're moving it now to over a bucket. Do you think this thing gets to 3.5? I mean, it's crazy, but LA's got all the value here, not Dallas.
Yeah. And that's exactly why it becomes a quandary for people like myself. If you bet Dallas at 1.5 when it opened, you got the right number. If you bet them at 2, I do see that. There's an isolated shop out there that does take very smart money that's down to 2.5 at this point in time. So maybe it's coming backward a little bit here. Take back wouldn't surprise me from guys who got the best of the number early. But that's why I said off the start, Joe, that maybe you're better off just betting money line here on Dallas. I don't want to come off of Dallas because I think they're the winner in the game. You just have to find the way to bet them. Do you want to bet them in some segmented form, first quarter, first half, something like that? I don't even know if I could make myself or convince myself to do it in any of those fashions. But I do think full game at the end of the game, I think they'll win. And so maybe money line's the way to go here.
Yeah, and Catch You Slippin's got a good point. It was kind of the same situation with New York yesterday, where it felt like they were, they kind of made it, the books made it as if it was, this series is over. I mean, the Knicks just got to go through the motion here. They're the right side. I will say this, too, here before we take a look at the upcoming Minnesota and Denver series. We'll get some initial thoughts from Rob there, as well as whether the Knicks are toast, because Thibs was at it again, Veno, yesterday. I'll just mention Kyrie, his point prop is, I believe, 25.5, so 26.5, somewhere in that ballpark. I'll tell you this, he don't get over this, Veno, they don't win. I'll tell you right now, it's a rout. So anybody thinking Dallas, got to get all over Kyrie, man, in this spot here, over 25.5, 26.5 points. That I would absolutely correlate that big time. And by the way, I was all over Harden's point prop over the weekend in that last game. It was 18.5 points. He's gone over that now 4 straight games, and it's not even remotely close, Rob. Like, Harden is absolutely balling out here. So I think regardless, the stars show up and show out, and the over seems like it's also not a bad play in this game. I still think it's going 7. Veno, is that crazy? I still think that 7 games are coming here.
Yeah, I could see that, Joe. Absolutely, I could see that because the two teams are so mirror image like. They both want to do things the same way. It's which team will adjust. I think Ty Lue adjusted best last game.
Yep.
But then again, he needed the help of 23 threes. And when the Clippers have won, they've shot real well. Now, that shouldn't be a surprise because the Clippers were the best road shooting team from three-point land this season. So it's not like the Clippers came from nowhere to do that. They have guys capable. And like you said earlier, with Kawhi off the floor, not only is it that the offense didn't look right with him, but defensively, a guy who's an all-pro defensive player didn't look like an all-pro defensive player. Obviously, side-to-side movement was limited with the inflamed knee. For Dallas, Tim Hardaway Jr. wasn't doing much in this series before he got hurt, but it is an extra shooter that they might like to have tonight with Luka telling you that his knee is in pretty rough shape. So I totally agree with the fact that Kyrie should take this one over. And I think they've had 2 days to game plan that. Honestly, I think that Jason Kidd probably figures, you know what, Luka, here's what we're going to do. And Luka and Kyrie get along real well now. Remember last year when they couldn't make the playoffs together and it looked like a disaster? It's not a disaster anymore. No.
Kyrie, 25.5, Luka, 33.5, and they have jacked Harden's up to 22.5 as his point prop, but I would not at all be shocked if it's not raining from the outside here. Also, I don't know if they still list it, but Russell Westbrook over a half a turnover would be fantastic. Whatever the turnover number is on Westbrook, Guarantee he's going to go over it, people. Just go ahead and bet it right now. Whatever Russell Westbrook's turnover prop is, he's committing it. He is going over on turnovers. It's easy money. I promise you on that. All right, so talk to me here, Veno. Last night we saw the Sixers stave off elimination thanks to Maxey showing up. They brought it up in the chat room, and I think it's a great point, right? They kind of made it seem, the books made that line as if the Knicks were not out of it. Now, quite honestly, the Knicks should have won that game. It was over until Thibs got involved. And there were a number of very head-scratching moves at the end of that game. But to Philadelphia's credit, they took advantage of it here. Are the Knicks in trouble? Is this another 7-game series here, Veno?
You know, it's interesting when you look at it statistically through 5, Joe, there's not much separation between these teams whatsoever, numbers-wise. I mean, the biggest separation is probably in rebounding, where the Knicks have had a couple of big games where they've had a huge rebounding edge. But other than that, the other 3 games were close in the rebound category. And most of the other statistical stuff, it doesn't show Knick dominance. And I have to tell you that as this series goes along, we saw it last night, it's been talked about a lot today, that it appears like Jalen Brunson has in his head that he's the only guy that can score on this team. And last night in overtime, when I think they put up 10 shots and he shot 8 of them, or whatever it was, 80% of the overtime shots, and him not looking for teammates much, that starts to settle in here, and the Knicks become a one-man band offensively. It could be tough for them. Again, I just go back to game 2, which has not really mentioned nationally whatsoever. I mean, most of the national media and written material that you see kind of blames the Knicks last night for blowing the series. However, if we go back to game 2, you could blame the referees for not only missing 1 foul call on Maxey, 2 foul calls on Maxey, a missed timeout by Nick Nurse, a game that Philadelphia probably would have won with the proper referee calls, and they'd be up 3-2. So it is a series that has the feel of 7. I think Philly's got a little life pumped into them. When they came home for the first time after playing games 1 and 2 in New York, they won by 14 in that first game here in Philly. So, you know, last game, a lot of Knick fans were in the Philadelphia crowd. I don't know how many Knick fans are going to be able to find tickets for this game upcoming here. I think they probably take it to heart a little bit after Embiid went at their fan base somewhat. It's you know, 2 of the 3 best players are on the Philadelphia side. And if Jalen Brunson wants to make it a one-man show offensively, that could make it difficult for New York.
I think it'll make it very difficult for New York in this one. They had a shot. I would hate to think, and Knick fans know it too in the back of their head, that you had the opportunity to close them out and you didn't do it. You left the door open, and yikes. This is going to be an interesting series, to say the least, this way through. Were you leaning one way or the other? Any initial thoughts on Minnesota and Denver, Rob? You think you think Denver might have their hands full here with the bigs and the physicality of what they're going to bring here, Minnesota?
Yeah, I think we even talked about this, Joe, before the playoffs started, as we were looking at series prices and what could be upcoming down the road and who might win the West. The biggest threat to Denver, and again, the biggest knock on Oklahoma City and Minnesota all along has been, they're too young. They're too young. They're too young. They're too young. But, you know, I remember with Minnesota, because I bet them in the series for Phoenix, I looked at it and I said, well, how many playoff games have Mike Conley Jr. and Rudy Gobert played for Utah? About 200. So they weren't really that young. And you could see Anthony Edwards developing. During the season, Minnesota gave Denver trouble. And all season long, especially the back half after the All-Star break, as we did the NBA tip-off shows, we would know each and every day, Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Denver. They were in that jockeying for position for home floor the whole way. I don't think these 2 teams, Oklahoma City and Minnesota, are going anywhere. And from a matchup standpoint, Minnesota matches up very well with size against Denver. You know, one advantage Denver usually has is that front line of Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Jokic. And here you get Towns, Gobert, and company, and it's not that big a mismatch, if any at all. So I think seeing what we just saw from the Lakers, who had the potential to win more than one game in that series, Denver could be. You can't apply. I don't want to get too crazy because people like to associate what they saw last with what's going to happen next. I don't think that the Phoenix series is applicable here, Joe, because Phoenix they're the total opposite of Denver. They don't compete. Yep. They're soft. They don't rebound. They got killed. Minnesota's not going to have anything like that against Denver. So, 7-game series, I think very, very possible. And in the end, Denver's probably the more experienced team that could eke it out. But it's going to be a tough one for them.
Oh, it absolutely is. 4.5, I believe. 5 is what we're seeing for that game on Saturday. The opening game in Denver against Minnesota. We should also mention and shout out to those in the chat room yesterday who were pointing out the fact that Milwaukee as a home dog maybe not have been such a bad look given the fight and the youth of Indiana. Veno, did you see that game going the way it did? I mean, I thought they had a shot to keep it within a number, but man, they put their foot right on the throats of Indiana last night, and now we got ourselves a series, and who knows? Is Lillard or anybody coming back if they can extend this?
Well, you wouldn't expect Giannis to come back, and if he did, I mean, we talked about the disruption that Kawhi caused in the offense coming back after not playing for the first half of this month. So I don't know that Giannis could have a monster effect in the condition that he's in right now. Whether or not Damian Lillard plays, they've scored 113 and 115 the last 2 games without either of those guys. So they've certainly found offense against Indiana, which is a team we know all season long. You don't have to be a brain surgeon, just follow the NBA a little bit. And Indiana doesn't play a lot of defense. They want to outscore you. Last night, they couldn't outscore them. First quarter was great for the Pacers. After that, Patrick Beverley inserted himself defensively. It became a little bit tougher for Indiana. But going home, Joe, prior to that game last night, Tyrese Halliburton had said, people don't believe that you can win in the playoffs playing fast. We don't believe that at all. We're going to continue to play fast. And I think at home playing fast, can Milwaukee honestly put forth that same defensive performance that they put forth yesterday? They're not a good defensive team to begin with. I think that might have been a one-off. Fighting for their lives at home in front of their home crowd. Indiana didn't take the punch. They got buried. But those 2 home games that Indiana played against Milwaukee were pretty much routes. So I would think Indiana, that it'll be their chance, right? If they don't win that game, they might not go back to Milwaukee and win. They might lose that series. So I think it's very important for Indiana. And I do think they'll play a pretty high-scoring game. The Pacers, 92 points last night isn't like them.
And listen, right, with young teams, we say it all the time, sometimes you got to lose before you can win, right? Like that was a big spot for a very inexperienced and young Pacers team. But now they got to play themselves an extra game. So we'll see what kind of bounce back we get from them in there. All right, S. Warrior in the house here, Veno. He is screaming, I believe, about an over here tonight. And looks like he believes points are coming for at least some of the props from Miami. I guess where the hell else are they coming? Like Caleb Martin, he better, 12.5, 13.5 points. He better show up here tonight. Isn't he like an every other game kind of dude anyway? Like he hits 30, then he hits 3, then he hits 25, then he hit like Caleb Martin is the absolute zigzag in the prop betting market here. But if I had to guess, I think he is not going to meet a 3-point shot he don't like tonight. I think Hero is probably poised. And if you like the over in the game, then you better like those guys in the over in the prop betting market. I think that's correlated as well there, Veno. The only guy I'd worry about is Bam, because he's not going to be a part of that perimeter game that they're going to need in order to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to disagree with any of that, Joe. I mean, last game, Caleb Martin took 14 shots. Tyler Hero took 17 shots. We mentioned they had open threes. They just didn't make them. If they go down tonight, somebody's got to shoot the basketball. And both of those guys said prior to game 4, they're willing to shoot it. And they will look to shoot it. So if you're going to play player props with those two, there's no way I'm talking you off. What surprised me a little bit is that Duncan Robinson only got 2 minutes in that game. Could be partially due to injury. You probably get cheap numbers on guys like Jovic and Highsmith as well. Somebody's got to score. These guys are going to get a lot of minutes. And at low point totals, maybe you can play them over as well if you think they're going to score tonight.
Yeah. I think and if you think Miami and those guys are going to score, their team total is 92.5. 92.5. All right. I don't know how else I don't know if I can sign it maybe, or you know what I mean? Something along the line. 92.5. So if you think Miami, and I love S. Warrior because all he's writing is it's his time. He's due. Well, if he's due, then they are definitely due to score more than 92.5 points, I think, in this game here. And Rob Veno, what do you got locked and loaded tonight over on your page at WagerTalk?
We do have a 4% best bet up and available, Joe, for tonight's action. You can go ahead and get that. It's followed up by 3% in the NBA. So a couple of plays there, along with a free play up and available right now, WagerTalk.com. Tomorrow's going to be the big day for me because I'm going to have a 5% blue chip release tomorrow. So we have something in those two games that we really like a lot. So look forward to that as well. But for tonight, you can get a 4% best bet and a 3% top release at wagertalk.com. You can see the page right there, wt.buzz/RV.
All right, one final question for the chat room here. Bet for Mavs and Clippers. Ryan, the bet for the Mavs and the Clippers is we have no idea why this line shot up to 3 with Kawhi Leonard being ruled out, since he absolutely does not factor into any of it. But there's an argument to be made for both. I still think over is coming. I think Kyrie points over is happening here tonight as well in that one. And also, Vino, more likely to happen. Who gets more? Caleb Martin, does he get more points? Or do the Cubs score more runs?
Oh, dear Lord.
Yeah, that's tough.
Caleb Martin doesn't win that.
It's
man.
If Caleb Martin don't get that, we are screwed, people. Absolutely screwed here. And it's good to see that the Phillies can't score any runs again until late in the game. 2-1, they're down as well. That'll do it here, guys. We certainly appreciate you hanging out. Shout out to Derry and Money. You guys are the best. Shout out to Big Daddy in the house. S. Warrior, I know you believe, my man. I know you believe. But believe the Miami point total going over tonight. If you believe that, I think that's the way to go. Vino, always the best. Guys, best of luck. John Finley, Patty Mills, over 3.5 old bathroom trips. Good Christ almighty, the chat room has lost it. We've completely lost it in the chat room. Enjoy the games, guys. We'll see you again tomorrow. Two huge games tomorrow, by the way. Philly and the Knicks. Of course, Bucks, Pacers. Come back. We'll have it broken down for you tomorrow on the NBA Tip-Off Show. Enjoy tonight, guys. Cash those tickets. We'll see you.